Hi, this is Kerry Artak with Wicked Stocks, bringing you your weekly Bitcoin analysis, a Bitcoin update. This is a weekly chart, spans some 10 years roughly, not quite, maybe 8 or 9 years. And it was a couple of weeks ago, we closed below this significant 8.5, 9 year channel bottom that this week is at 62,945. When we did close below it on this big down week, we did by barely a 1% margin, so we did meet all the necessary qualifications for considering that to be a long-term sell signal. Obviously, last week the market did reject that. That can happen at these long-term pivot points. Some analysts, and I don't go with this just because we're providing analysis, and I don't like people having to wait a long time for clarity. But some analysts will want a double sell signal. In other words, 2 weeks in a row below these long-term structures before acting. And that's a valid approach. 62,945 is the channel bottom. We are now at 64,281 and recovering modestly, ever so slightly. I'm throwing in the low weekly settlement price from 2 weeks ago, 61,629. That is the lowest Bitcoin has settled on the weekly chart going back, to late 24. And if we do close below 61,629, then indeed we're back in the bearish camp, so to speak, anticipating 49,363, this pullback low in August of 24. Within, with presently anemic volatility, low volatility, this could be a couple of months. With a spike in volatility, could be a couple of weeks. I do still think that if we close the week below 61,629, we can endure a long-term unwinding by the end of the year, potentially, over the next full year anyway, into the mid to upper 10s, 15,559 and 19,289, just because of the significance of this long-term channel structure that is based on a series of highs going back 8-9 years. And so here we are. Now, there's a certain, if you're short, I think there's a compelling reason to be out of a short position, no doubt. Should you be long now? Should you go long Bitcoin if you're not long already? If you're long already, then you just sort of hang in there. A settlement below 61,629, I think, is your indication to at least lighten up, if not exit a long position altogether. But right now, the emphasis does seem to be to the upside, and does allow over the next 2 or 3 months this newly formed descending channel top at 82,429. So, continued weekly settlements above 62,945 will maintain the 82,000 handle as a 2 to 3 month target. This will be a significant upside continuation point through the rest of the year and into next. I think if we close above 82,421, that this 95,944 is just the initial target and what could be a long-term protracted rally back into the 120s. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I do want to mention that along 62,945, we also have the high of last week. And this, if settled this week. So, after a big sell-off like this, we have a very quiet week. We close below the channel. We close back above it last week, 62,945. The question begs, can we anticipate 82,421 over the next 2 to 3 months, which I consider an objective anyway, so long as we continue closing week by week above this 8.5-year channel top. Channel bottom. But if we close above last week's high, that is an upward pivot. So closing above this high of 64,353 at the end of the week does indeed enhance the likelihood for 82,421 over the next 2 to 3 months. I think that pretty much covers it. It really is a pivot point here. I've got 2 key levels, 62,945 all day long. But really, in terms of an aggressive upward pivot point, if you're not long yet, you go long with a settlement above 64,353. And in terms of the downside, if you are, and I'll go back to this chart, if you're looking to go short or exit Bitcoin and you're presently long, or you're not in a position at all and you're wondering whether to play the short side or to stay out of the market altogether, that would be a settlement below 61,629, the low settlement price. So 61,629 and 64,353. Those are your two key levels that if we close outside that range, you have a directional framework in the respective direction. And of course, that we are above this 8.5-year channel top again, closing above it last week is a rejection of a long-term sell signal that carries with it an upward bias anyway. Closing above 64,353 does solidify that bias. I'm going to leave it at that for this week's Bitcoin analysis. You have a great week.